Hey everybody, Joe here with 360 Comics, and today I'm bringing you our first speculation video of 2022. Today we're talking all about some books with some serious MCU potential. As of the time of recording this video, we are less than 20 subscribers away from our 1,200 subscriber goal for our giveaway of this Alpha Flight number 1. If you haven't done so yet, now is definitely the time to hit that subscribe button. Don't forget, you got to also give this video a thumbs up for a like and leave a comment down below. That gets you one entry, and you can go check out our other videos for additional entries. We're going to be picking a winner soon, so you don't want to miss out on that. And I'm happy to announce another giveaway as well. This one's for 6,000 followers over on Instagram, and you can win this copy of Warlock number 12. This has an origin story of Pip the Troll, a character we've gotten a little taste of so far, and we'll definitely be seeing in the future of the MCU, along with Warlock himself. Make sure you go follow over on Instagram, where I'll be posting instructions how to enter later today. So I decided to do something just a little bit different for this speculation video as compared to my past. One thing that I've done a couple times is talk about how many copies are on the CGC Census. Well, for this video, I decided to talk about that for each book that we're going over today, give you a little bit more insight on how many copies are out there. Basically, for those of you who don't know, the CGC Census keeps track of how many times a certain grade is given out on a certain book. Now, due to people resubmitting, trying to get higher grades, cracking slabs, pressing, cleaning, all that stuff, the census is not 100% accurate. You know, it's probably also got a handful of mistakes on there to begin with, but hey, it's probably reasonably close, especially for more modern books that are going to get the 9.8 most of the time. And obviously, the number of 9.8s is probably very, very close because people aren't cracking and resubmitting those books. So like I said, we're going to talk about those. Just keep in mind that there are ghost copies out there, which is the term that I've heard used, and the CGC Census is not always completely accurate. Let's get into the books, though. First up, we've got a book that you've seen me pick up a couple times recently, Punisher number 1. This is the first book of the Punisher miniseries from 1985, which also is the first Punisher solo run. He did get an ongoing series a couple years later, but this was first, and it's got some awesome Mike Zeck artwork. We know who the Punisher is. We know he's a very popular character, and if you've been following comics and, prices at all, you know that his first appearance in Amazing Spider-Man 129 has gone through the roof. As far as Bronze Age comics go, it's definitely one of the ones that's up there. Not quite as high as Marvel Spotlight 5 or Hulk 181, but it is kind of the second tier down from that as far as expensive Bronze Age keys go. Now, what people do, I've said this a bazillion times, I'll keep saying it, when you can't afford the first appearance, you go for the first solo book, first solo story, things like that. So this Punisher number 1 is that exact book, his first solo story, first solo title, awesome Mike Zeck artwork, and for that reason, I think this is a great pickup. We have seen some characters from the Marvel Netflix shows come to the big screen or the small screen. We've seen Daredevil on the big screen. We've seen Kingpin on the small screen. I think we're going to see more of those two as well as some others. And if there's any character that fans want to see, it's the Punisher. They want Jon Bernthal specifically to come back as the Punisher. He did great in Daredevil as well as his Punisher spin-off series. And yeah, I mean, I think eventually the character's coming to the MCU, whether it's Jon Bernthal reprising the role or not, we're going to see the character. 129 is going to jump even more, and this is going to get pulled up as well. I truly think that, like I said, I've picked up a couple copies recently, and I already had a couple to go along with it. And this is also really nice. One thing is, it's only a 4-issue miniseries, so it's pretty easy to get the whole set if that is something you're interested in, and it's a great story at that. Taking a look at the CGC Census numbers here, we've got 387 copies graded in a 9.8, which really isn't that much at all in my opinion. Once it gets into the thousands, that's a lot of copies of a book. It's a lot more common, but with only 387 in this case, in a 9.8, it's not super easy to find. Now, the most popular number, the grade that has the highest population rather, is 9.6. One step down, there are 704 copies on the census. Some of those probably are ghost copies though, like I said before, but we're not going to get into that here. And total graded copies come out to 3,263. Now that is total copies including yellow, green, and purple labels. Yellow being signature series, green being incomplete or qualified, and purple being restored. The first two numbers I gave you are only the blue standard label, but I'm doing the total. For total number of slabs, there are 3,263. So not hard to find a slab, but as far as the 9.8 and 9.6 go, there's barely over 1,000 of the two. Up next, we got a book that I am so surprised isn't worth more than it is, strictly because of what is in the story. We've got X-Men 212, the first battle between Sabretooth and Wolverine. How is this book not more expensive? Wolverine, one of the all-time most beloved characters, just a fan favorite through the roof, to the moon, and then his main adversary, Sabretooth, their first battle in this Uncanny X-Men issue. I'm not sure why this book isn't more expensive already, but with mutants coming to the MCU, there is only a matter of time until we see some of these books popping big time. Now, I don't know if Wolverine's going to come right away. I don't know if Sabretooth's going to come right away. I don't know if they're going to have a meetup anytime in the next couple years, but it is bound to happen eventually. I truly do think so. And just, as far as Wolverine keys go, there's a bazillion of them, and the price kind of rises on all of them when, the price of the big one, Hulk 181, goes up in price. So I just think this is a really solid pickup. It's a Claremont X-Men book. People collect that run, so it's a Wolverine cover as well. People collect this stuff. I don't think there's a lot of downside to this one, but the upside potential is pretty big. Now, as far as the numbers go, similar to the last one, there are 323 9.8s on the census. That is, again, not the most common. There are 432 9.6s. So, a little bit less all around than the Punisher book. Same thing with the total, 1,807 total graded copies on the census, about half of the Punisher book that we previously looked at. Now, interestingly enough, there is one 9.9 that really isn't super relevant. If you got that one, if you're the lucky person that has it, hey, good for you. But 9.9 prices don't really dictate anything. They're just so rare with a book like this. Fast forwarding to the 1990s, we're now into the second volume of X-Men, the Jim Lee X-Men run, as I like to call it. And we got X-Men number 4 here, the first appearance of Omega Red. As you can see, I've got a 9.8. I've actually got a couple 9.8s, including a newsstand. I realized when I was recording this, I don't have a raw copy of this. So I'm going to be on the lookout for a cheap raw copy to add to my collection. I definitely had one. Maybe I just can't find it. Anyway, this book was definitely more massively printed than the last two. This was during the comic boom of the early 90s. Just a few issues before this, X-Men number 1 is the most sold comic of all time. That being said, there are much higher census numbers, and I'll get into them in just a second. But first, let's talk about the significance of this book. First appearance of Omega Red, an awesome 90s X-Men villain. This is the stuff that I grew up with. This was one of the new characters that had just been introduced kind of when I was getting into comics in the mid 90s. This character had not been around for decades like a lot of them had, but I found this character to be really awesome. That being said, there was a lot of hype earlier this year, a lot of speculation, or sorry, rather last year in 2021, of this character coming to the screen. People were thinking in Falcon and Winter Soldier, and there was also X-Men hype thinking that they were coming to the MCU soon. Well, this book took a big leap in value and then has slowly come down over time as that hype has died down. I think it's kind of leveled out on the bottom now, and I think it's probably a good time to get in on this book. 9.8s have come down significantly. Raw copies have not dropped too much, though. So you might want to look out for a slabbed copy of this rather than buy it raw, unless you can find a really nice high-grade copy for a good price, because there are so many 9.8s out there. There are, in fact, 3,413 9.8s on the census. There is one 9.9. There are 1,863 9.6s as well, and the total census number is over 8,000 at 8,185. Now, this is a fairly easy book to find. Do not overpay on this book. It is out there. Find a deal. Wait for one to pop up on eBay and bid on it. Hope for it to go kind of low. Maybe include it in a bundle deal when you're grabbing stuff from your LCS or a dealer. This is a book you should definitely not overpay on, because there are so many copies out there. And that's one reason why it might not be the best spec book. And I know that. I'm still adding this on the list because of the potential of this character. And we saw the price already go up and it's come down. So it definitely can go up again, especially if there's any confirmed or reasonable news as for this character coming to the screen. I've got kind of a weird one for you guys next. Fantastic Four 209, the first appearance of Herbie the Robot. What? Yes, just hear me out here. So people are speculating heavy on the MCU and the Fantastic Four's first appearance. They're one of the most monumental teams in Marvel Comics. They honestly saved Marvel in the early 60s, and they're coming to the MCU. Hopefully, they will finally do the Fantastic Four right. We've had 3 movies so far in the past, and we want to forget about them. But let's get a good one this time. Anyway, people are speculating not only on the Fantastic Four themselves, but characters that surround them. We've seen the price of Silver Surfer and Galactus' first appearances, and even like Heralds of Galactus and Franklin Richards, the child of 2 of the members of the Fantastic Four. Those books have gone up significantly in price over the past year or two in anticipation for the Fantastic Four coming. But this book really has not moved at all. Now, for those of you who don't know, Herbie is a robot that was first featured actually in an animated television show, I believe in the 1970s. Fantastic Four show in the 70s. Might have been early 80s, but irrelevant. Now, this is a character that has something that I personally call, and I'm coining this term, and I'm gonna coin it right here, and hopefully I get credit for this. He has Harley Quinn syndrome. The reason I call it Harley Quinn syndrome is Harley Quinn first appeared in the animated television show, Batman, and then was later added to the comics. Lots of characters have done that, some prior, but a lot since, and I call that Harley Quinn syndrome. This character, same thing, first appeared in the animated television show, and then, made his way into the comic books. Now, I watched the show as a kid, and maybe it was because I was a kid and I was dumb and, whatever, superheroes, whatever it was, I liked. But I thought the character was kind of funny, kind of quirky. Think of like C-3PO and R2-D2 as characters in Star Wars. They're, comic relief, great backup characters. I thought Herbie was very similar to them. That being said, I don't think this character has had a lot of, long-term hype or fandom or anything like that, but it's definitely a character that they could bring back as sort of that comic relief in the MCU that we've seen time and time again. There's not a single MCU movie where I didn't laugh at least a handful of times. So they're going to have characters like that. I think H.E.R.B.I.E is the perfect one. So this is like a really affordable book. You can get copies for like between like $5 and $15, I think. And for a Bronze Age Fantastic Four book, that's pretty cheap, especially a key. So talking about the Census, there's actually not a lot of copies on the Census. This book is pretty rare in a high grade or any grade at all, just because I don't think people are really onto it. There are only 39 copies in a 9.8, and that is the highest population. 9.6s, just a little bit less at 32, and the entire Census is made up of only 132 graded copies. And again, there are probably some ghost copies in there, so it's probably more like 120, maybe even less than that. That being said, I think that finding this in a high grade and getting it graded is probably a good idea. You can also probably get a 9.8 reasonably cheap because there is not a lot of speculation behind this character. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe they don't have the rights to it anymore, or it's not possible to bring the character in for some legal reason, but I could not find anything on that while doing my research. Next, we've got a book that is cheap due to the terrible cover. Hulk 418, the first appearance of Talos. Now, we've already seen Talos in the MCU, so it's not really, a character that we're going to be surprised about or anything, but we know the character is going to be in Secret Invasion. Now, I personally think they're going to do a really good job with Secret Invasion because the Disney Plus shows have all been really solid, and I believe that is the format. It's going to be a Disney Plus show. That being said, Talos is going to be one of the main characters, at least as far as news and leaks and stuff goes. So I think that this book has some serious potential because when that comes out, everyone's going to be watching it. People are going to be buying the keys, and this book is super cheap. I found it plenty of times in dollar bins, and if it's not in a dollar bin, it's usually marked at like $2, $3, $5, somewhere in there. Not a lot of places have caught on to the potential of this book. I see copies online selling for like $10 to $15 if they're in a really high grade, but you really want to get a nice clean copy of this. It's got a white cover, and it's a die cut open up in the middle cover, which is weird and stupid, but that being said, there are a lot of potential defects, so you got to look this one over pretty carefully. As far as the Census goes, there's not a whole lot on there. 9.8s, Blue Label, there are 298, so less than 300. Only 44 9.6s, so it drops off really heavily from 9.6, from 9.8 to 9.6, which makes sense because this book came out in the 90s, and it's a thicker cardstock cover, die cut. They always did that with the die cut covers, made them thick, so it's easier to find in that high grade quality. The total Census is only 415, so 3/4 of the Census almost is 9.8s. There is one 9.9 on the Census, just like a couple other of these books, but again, not super relevant. So yeah, look out for this one, especially if you can get it for $1 out of a dollar bin. This is a very low risk. Same with that last one, that Fantastic Four book. You can get these pretty cheap, low risk if you want to speculate on, for this one, something that's confirmed already. It's not like this is a character that might show up somewhere, or there's been some weird rumor. This character is coming back, has already been in the MCU, and we'll see more of him soon. I talked about this book on Instagram already, but I felt like I needed to put it in a video as well. We've got Zodiac #1, Zodiac's first appearance. Now, I did not know about this character at all until reading the current Moon Knight run. I believe he appears at the end of issue 4, if I remember correctly, but love that. I love it when Marvel goes back and brings back a potentially cool character that never really took off, and puts that character in a current run, especially a popular run like Moon Knight. Obviously the Moon Knight show is coming out, so I think that book is being read by a lot of people. Now, that being said, a lot of times the MCU, the movies, the shows, they imitate in a way or take things from current things in the comics, current character appearances, aspects, things like that. Now, notice, we had word a few months ago of Devil's Reign, which is, for those of you who don't know, a comic event that's happening right now in Marvel. I believe the second issue just came out a couple weeks ago. We're waiting on issue 3, I believe. Now, Devil's Reign centers around Daredevil and Kingpin. And guess what? Guess who came to the MCU just last month? Both of those characters. Now, when they announced Devil's Reign, that's when I decided I was buying my Daredevil 1. I kind of used some of that logic, like, hey, they're doing a big event. Maybe these characters are coming to the screen, and they did, which was awesome. Stoked about that. This character, he showed up in the Moon Knight book. He's a character that was pulled from the past. Maybe are they setting up a reintroduction of this character because they're putting him in the show? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Either way, first appearance, pretty cheap book. I'm seeing them go from like 10 at the lowest. I got one for 8, I think it was $8.50 or something on eBay recently. But most of them are kind of going in that like $10 to $20 range. Some of them even over 20 a little bit. Now, the tough thing about this book is there is no census data. I guess no one got this one graded. Couldn't find any. I even checked, I thought there might be an error with the census, but I checked eBay current listings and sold listings. There was 0 up of this book in any grade. So I think people just didn't get this book graded. It was some random mini series during the Dark Reign run, and people kind of just passed it by. Now, I think there probably are copies that are at CGC right now waiting to get graded. Ever since that book came out, that Moon Knight book featuring this character, the price of this has gone up just a little bit, and because of that, I'm sure people were sending in copies. So we'll have to wait and see how many exactly are there, but there's definitely some of them. So hopefully we'll get some census data up and running. If you end up finding a 9.8 somehow out there, maybe it's one of the first ones that come back, make sure you don't overpay on it, because there's plenty of high-grade raw copies out there. Like I said, I got this one for $8.50, and it's pretty high-grade. Maybe not 9.8, but is also part of a 3-issue miniseries. I ended up grabbing the whole series. These two came in a collection I bought that didn't have this the same week that I bought this one on eBay. But yeah, no data to share with you on this one, so on to the next. I've mentioned this in my last 2 MCU speculation videos, but I feel like there is a need to expand Spider-Man's rogue gallery. Obviously, we've got like the classic villains, Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, but we can't just keep seeing them over and over and over again, especially if we're getting more Tom Holland movies. It looks like we're getting 3 more. At least that is what the rumors are. That being said, they're going to add in different characters. Now, I've mentioned a couple along the way. I think this one's a pretty nice one. We've got Amazing Spider-Man 256. This is the first appearance of Puma. He's got a great cover appearance, and in my opinion, this is a really underrated cover. Puma started off as a villain, eventually teams up with Spider-Man in the 90s. Is actually pretty prominent in the early, mid part of the 90s. And this character, plays the villain, plays the kind of like anti-hero, and then eventually kind of ends up being more of a hero and really fighting alongside Spider-Man, which is awesome. That character development is something they can do really nicely in the movies. Now, that being said, this character also has another advantage. He is a Native American character, which, there aren't a lot of. There's not a lot to pick from. And Marvel is definitely really trying to go for a lot of representation and making sure that everyone has a character that they can look at and connect with in some way. And because there's not a lot of Native American characters, the potential of one being picked is much higher. Like I said, I think there's a lot of great things about this character, from a personality and character development standpoint. And also, this is just a nice Copper Age key to pick up. There aren't too many on the census. In fact, 227 in a 9.8, 265 in a 9.6. So those are very close to each other. Not a whole lot in those high grades. But that makes up for more than half the census, as the total census is 884. There is, again, one 9.9. Who is getting these one single 9.9s? I hope that I can be that person one day, but I seriously doubt it. Anyway, yeah, look out for this book. It was... I used to see this book for $10 a lot, all over the place for $10. It's creeping up in value. It's kind of, I saw it hitting 15, 20. I've even seen it for 25 places. So keep an eye out. If you can get it for cheap, definitely worth a pickup in my opinion. Last up on this speculation list is a book I've been picking up for a while now. In fact, recently you've seen me pull it out of the dollar bin and get it for half price on a New Year's Day sale. We've got Amazing Spider-Man, Free Comic Book Day 2007. Yes, this book was handed out for free, and now I think it is a really great key to have. It's a double first appearance. Now, we've got, first of all, the first cameo appearance of Mr. Negative. Now, this character has some potential as a Spider-Man villain that could be showing up in the MCU. As I said, they're gonna expand to other villains, lesser known ones. But even more importantly than that, we got some little teasers, possibly about this character. We had some signs and a truck, and I believe a T-shirt in Spider-Man No Way Home with the Feast Organization logo on it. Now, the Feast Organization is run by Mr. Negative in the comics, therefore, they could be saying that this character does exist in this universe. Maybe it's a little bit of foreshadowing on the character coming in a subsequent movie. So I think that is definitely a pretty decent potential. Now, the other first appearance in this book is Jackpot. Now, Jackpot is a pretty cool character. Basically, a mom that becomes a superhero, and she was speculated on earlier this year, I believe, or about a year ago, that something was in development with her. Now, I think that might have just been, very early stages of planning or whatever. Doesn't seem like anything has come to fruition yet, but that doesn't mean it won't. Now, when I've said this before, when talking about speculation books, having a double key like this is really nice, because if one pops off, you're good. If the other pops off, you're good. If both pop off, you're really good. So that being said, you just have a higher chance of getting a win out of it. This book has gone up quite a bit. I've seen it selling between like $30 and $40 in a high grade. But again, there were a lot of copies given out, but most of them, as with most Free Comic Book Day stuff, is not handled correctly, not protected, so that there's only 137 9.8s on the census and 84 9.6s, with a total of 333 on the census. So, well over half, actually over 3/4 of them, of the entire census is in that 9.8, 9.6, and that's really where you want a modern book like this. This came out in 2007. That's 15 years ago at this. Wow, 2007 was 15 years ago. That's crazy to me. I'm getting old. That being said, you want this in a high grade. It's a white cover, so it's tough. But if you can pick it up on the cheap, I definitely think it is a good one to grab and hold on to. I think I have 5 or 6 copies right now, so they're sticking with me at least for a while. We'll see if either of those characters make their appearance. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said, I did it a different way. I talked more about the census because it's something that people have said they liked in the past. If you like it, leave a comment below. If you don't like it, also leave a comment below. Let me know what you think of this style for future speculation videos. And, just leave a comment in general. If you want to talk about anything, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up for a like and hit that subscribe button. Head on over to Instagram, all that stuff. We're doing weekly claim sales over there on Instagram. So if you haven't checked those out, make sure you do. And until next time, turn the page, wash your hands.